an information comes in, let's assume there is an emergency in Damusa, because we have run the center for quite a time before it was, actually done away with. Actually,
when was it?
By the current leadership of the Ministry of Security and Home Affairs.
Existing the moment Aminu Bello Masari stepped down.
It has unfolded. Yes, it has unfolded. It is not in existence anymore. Well, actually, the issue of the security situation in the state is not far from what is transpiring in terms of the level of insecurity, which has become heightened by the day, despite government investments in the security sector. There seem to be less result in terms of the desirable outcomes of what the public actually need or what we desire in terms of ensuring peace and security in the state. From the onset of the breakout of the banditry in the northwest, from just shortly after 2016 to date, we have seen levels of heightened insecurity, and even sometimes if there is a calm, it's always an uneasy calm, and we have seen various approaches from the traditional to a semblance of a modern approach that we are given, all in quest of making sure that the tide of this heightened insecurity is being stemmed, and it is reduced to its barest minimum. But the current situation, particularly if you look at the challenges as well as the grievances and frustrations that have been voiced by people who are actively engaged in security, governance and administration, calls for concern.
What do you mean by the people who are actively engaged? You mean those that have been attacked, or those who are working towards bringing the situation to an end?
I'm talking about those who are actively engaged as stakeholders, especially those with responsibility of security, administration and governance. Particularly, yes. I'm referring to an interview I think granted to your medium by one of the commanders of the security community watch corps, who voiced his concerns.
So you're referring to the interview with the retired Major Bendumi.
Exactly. It clearly highlights the crisis in security, governance and administration in the state. And likely, if you look at the interview, not necessarily an interview, but a comment by a well-meaning Nigerian and an elder statesman from the northern, now from northern Nigeria. I'm talking about General Theophilus Danjuma, when he reiterates what he had voiced about 2 years ago on the need for communities to move to protect themselves.
That's towards Danjuma's recent Easter message.
Exactly.
In his home state of Taraba.
Exactly, which was just yesterday, the 20th of April 2025. Barely a week after you have that major had granted that interview. And so these are actually issues that call for concern. Yes. As I have mentioned earlier, this clearly indicates, crisis, yes, within the security, governance and administration architecture all over northern Nigeria, in particularly given the approaches deployed by the state actors, particularly the state governments and the federal government, with all the security infrastructure, institutions and structures that we have to respond to this crisis. It seems there is a disconnect actually, and we need to look inward, particularly to see where we actually got it wrong, and how do we salvage the situation, and how do we actually move forward.
Well, can you share with us the peculiarity in Katsina with that of Taraba or any other state across the nation? Or as a retired military personnel, you are now back into the civil environment. What effort have you once made to see that things are being put in order, or the right approach is being made to see that the challenges of insecurity in Katsina State has been addressed?
Well, my involvement with the whole issue of security governance actually started from the previous administration of Governor Masari, when we were engaged as security consultants under the Department of Security during the leadership of the then Special Advisor to the State Governor on Security, Alhaji Ibrahim Katsina. We were actively engaged, and we have done a lot, particularly in fashioning out a knowledge-based and evidence-driven approach to security sector governance in Katsina State. We actually have done a lot. We have tried to bring into security governance architecture of Katsina State the best global practices when it comes to security governance. Let me just give you a background. In 2013, January 2013 to be specific, the African Union has convened a summit for security sector reform, otherwise known as the AU-SSSR, that is the African Union Security Sector Reform. It aims at the democratization of the security architecture in such a way that the elected public officials will be given greater oversight within the security governance framework. And so that ushered in a reformed and a totally new approach away from the traditional approach of security governance. Particularly if you look at by 2013, if there is, of course, almost there was no state in Africa that was under the yoke of military leadership at the time. The entirety of African societies and states have embraced the democratic system of government. So it's citizen driven, kind of by the people, for the people. And so where we were coming from, particularly in terms of issues related to security governance, were inherited from the military administrations of the entire African states in the African continent at the time. And so there was a need to move forward away from the military establishment of security governance, so which was exactly, which was hinged on centralization of the entire security architecture at the time, because military is for centralization. It gives no cognizance to devolution or decentralization, and that has become a problem. And so that was the scheme or the framework that we inherited from the military in Africa. So the AU 2013 security sector reform was aimed at the democratization of the entire security architecture to give greater oversight to the elected public officials. Yes, such that there will be a responsive, transparent and accountable security sector, one that is responsive to the yearnings and aspirations and the needs of the public, as well as one that is also accountable to the public through their elected officials. If you remember, recently also the former governor of Edo State, Adams Oshiomhole.
Well, let me take you aback. Could that be the reason why in Katsina State there was this three-tier security approach? Very good.
So going back to where we came from, the issue of the security sector reform in Katsina State, we made sure that things were in tune with the global best practices, drawing from the AU security sector reform of 2013, which inspires also the adoption of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2151 of 2014, a year after, which also urges, countries or states from the global south to make sure that they fully democratize their security sector, giving oversight to the elected public officials, making the security sector responsive and accountable, to the public through their elected officials. So in Katsina State, what was done was to make sure that the security sector was reformed for the first time away from the traditional approach under the leadership of Governor Masari and under the watch of Alhaji Ibrahim Katsina then as the security advisor to the governor. So what was done was to reform the local government law, to reform the local government law in order to accommodate those best practices in line with the conventions that Nigeria was a signatory to, the AU SSR, or the United Nations Security Sector Governance Reform of 2014. And I would want you to note one interesting fact, that the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2151 on Security Sector Reform of 2014 was adopted under the leadership of Nigeria, because then in 2014 a Nigerian was the president of the Security Council at the time. So one couldn't help but...
So what we saw here in Katsina those years during Governor Masari, they were just measures that are in conformity with international
best practices. Exactly. So what was done was local government reform of the Local Government Law 2000 to give way for a three-tier security structure, as you rightly call it. And one amazing thing about the three-tier security structure was that we are going back to where we come from. Going back to where we come from, in the sense that, from the onset of independence, from the onset of British occupation of Nigeria, particularly after amalgamation in 1914, the British looked at the spirit of, security or administration generally in northern Nigeria, which reflects kind of their view or their vision of how Nigeria's, governance and leadership will actually look like. So in tune with what we had during the Sokoto Caliphate, they retained the three-tier system of local administration, because they actually met us with the traditional system of local administration. There are about 3 or 4 major or broad types of local administration in the world today. Yes, you have the British type, you have the French type, you have the communist type like the Chinese and Cuba, which are still run on socialist or communist principles, as well as the traditional type of local administration. And that was the type of local administration that the British actually came to see and establish going forward in Nigeria as its protectorate, both the northern and the southern protectorates.
Going forward, due to want of time.
Yes.
To what extent has the adoption of the three-tier security structure at the local council level impacted in solving the problems?
Very
as
good.
You observed?
Very good. So as I've told you, it was in tune with what we inherited right from the onset of amalgamation, because Nigeria from 1914 operated a three-tier local administration, where you have the local development, the administrative the development board tier, the administrative tier, and the local council tier. So it is the local council tier that includes, that gives, the traditional leadership, the function of administration at the time, particularly given the native authority system that was operated. You have the development, the administrative, and then the Council of Chiefs. So that is how it continued until in 1976, because you have series of reforms of local administration by the military. So the 1976 reform ushered in a single tier, yes, with another board that is not considered as a tier, but as an advisory council of chiefs. So the role of the traditional institution during the 1976 reform under the military was reduced to an advisory role. Yes. So the 1991 reform, which was the reform of General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, actually truncated that advisory role and then introduced 2 arms of government at the local level, namely the executive and the legislature. Yes, so a full democratization of local administration without any role for the traditional authorities. So that is how it continued, and it gave way for so many issues because of any constitutional role, lack of constitutional role for the traditional leadership. But when in the year 2020, under Masari's administration, the heightened, insecurity owing from the banditry and other associated crimes necessitated full review. Then the 3-tier security structure was actually introduced. Yes, in tune with the spirit of what we inherited from the onset of British occupation in terms of what we had, what was bequeathed to us by our traditional institutions. So the three-tier security structure in the state at the local level comprises the following committees. One, the local, that is the first tier, known as the Local Government Peace and Security Committee, which is to be chaired by the local government chairman. Yes, by the local government chairman and the local government secretary.
Which was chaired? Because it was implemented, right?
Well, of course, it was rolled out and trainings. Let me just go through so that I will take you through before the implementation phase, actually. You have the local government chairman as the chairman, the local government secretary as the secretary. You have members like the district head of the local government as a member of the committee. You have all heads of security agencies, action security agencies, like the divisional police officer, the head of the NSCDC, the SSS head of the local government. All these are members of the committee. And to also give it a semblance of ownership and diversity, other members were also co-opted into that committee. For example, there are two representatives of the religious clergy, yes, to be appointed by the local government chairman. There are two women representatives that are also representatives of the youth. There are also representatives, two representatives of other interests and professional groups, all encompassing. Then the second tier is what is called the District Security Administration tier, which is to be headed by the most senior, that is the superior district head of the local government, because you have local governments
where there are
more than one. Exactly. But where you have only one, then he is to chair. Then the also councillors, yes, ward councillors of the local government are members. The district scribe, Bukadi, he is the secretary of the committee, and you have that composition also, representative of all the heads of security agencies, representatives of interest groups, women groups, the clergy, and so on. They are all members. So at the bottom of the ladder, the third tier, you have the ward or village tier. Yes. And so that ward or village tier is to be chaired by the councillor of the ward. By the councillor of the ward. And you have the composition also. But at the second tier, what I also perhaps missed to mention that I now remember is the integration of the vigilante head. The vigilante head also is integrated as a member of the second tier. And likewise, at the village tier, the representative of the head of the local government vigilante is also integrated as a member. So where you have 11, 10 or 12 wards, as is the case in Katsina State, these are the compositions at the ward levels, and they are expected to organize and coordinate security affairs of the local government, with the bottom feeding the center and the center also feeding the higher tier. Yes, with a clear demarcation of responsibilities and function, as well as a reporting mechanism that was actually put in place to make sure that there is a seamless coordination and synergy between these tiers. And so that gives way for a broad-based as well as a participatory driven approach to the administration of security governance at the local level.
Well, in a nutshell now, what do you think should be made, or what approach should be adopted? Because there is an upsurge of banditry in Katsina, and unlike the previous years where we hardly seen the escalations in dry season or Harmattan period like now, but now the attacks are back and in a broad daylight in some occasions. What do you think, or which measures do you think should be, taken to curtail?
Very good. So that is a failure, actually, of one very integral part of the reform project that was undertaken during the previous administration, and there is a disconnect and a discontinuation of the process. The UN resolution and the AU security sector reform have all, emphasized on the integration of technology in fighting, insecurity. And the integration of technology is actually germane, particularly in the area of AWA, that is early warning, early response mechanism. That was a very vital point that was stressed by the AU SSR and the UN Security Council SSR, which we have also domesticated at the time, and which were also domesticated in Katsina State, at the time. The Joint Command and Control Center was established in Katsina in 2022. Although it had actually existed right from the onset of the creation of the office or the Department of Security under the watch of Alhaji Ibrahim Katsina, but it operated at the police headquarters. But the need for domestication of the security sector reform in Katsina actually necessitated its movement away from the police headquarters to the former, to the old government house. We were given the old government house clinic to erect the center, and we were engaged as, consultants, and I served then as the coordinator of the center. It was a joint center because the entirety of the action, security and defense agencies had agents with their desks.
The relocation or movement of that center from the police headquarters down to the old government house to a more permanent and perhaps maybe a suitable location, demonstrate the commitments of the previous administration in addressing this problem.
Exactly. And at the same time, for the first time in the history of security sector governance and administration, an IT-driven approach was actually taken. A mobile application was developed and then launched and hosted on, Google Play Store, along other mediums for people to download.
You mean your committee?
Exactly, exactly. That mobile application was actually advertised, and there was a wide, advertisements and campaigns and sensitizations about the need for people to actually take advantage of that mobile application to report their emergency. So it was a citizen, based or citizen-driven approach to information gathering and intelligence, gathering and sharing at the same time. So people download the application, they report their emergencies. Those 10 action agencies have their agents from the army to the police to the DSS to the immigration to NDLEA all of them, NSCDC, even the Air Force,
You have
all of
security
them,
operatives
exactly.
to work.
Then
What was the level of synergy?
very coordinated, because you have all action agencies having their agents, yes, their desk officers. Once an information comes in, let's assume there is an emergency in the Musa, because we have run the center for quite a time before it was, you know, actually done away with, actually.
When was it?
By the current leadership of the Ministry of Security and Home Affairs.
Existing the moment Aminu Bello Masari stepped down.
It has yes, it has unfolded. It is not in existence anymore. So and the whole agents have dispersed, and the center was actually given for even the office accommodation was actually given out to some agency to occupy presently.
So everything and everyone about the center
it has been dismantled. It has been dismantled. So then people report their emergencies. Yes, either through audio call or through, you know, messaging, SMS, because we have Telegram where people send messages